Hey, welcome to this edition of Weather Wise Guys. As always, it's us, the Wise Guys. Meteorologist Evan Chickfera, and I'm also a meteorologist. My name's Wes Peary. Evan, has the fame calmed down for you over the last 3 weeks, 2 weeks?
A little bit. When it March 15th, 16th is when it happened. Still getting some interest. There's actually been some very positive things out of it. Got a MC event, a couple things that we're doing here in Birmingham. So it's settling though a little bit, which is good. Although my wife got some got some enjoyment out of a lot of the comments and whatnot. So interesting couple weeks to say the least.
I was gonna say, does she get like enjoyment or like anger when like reading the comments? Because I have to tell my wife to like, please just don't look at the comments because it's not worth either emotion or roller coaster.
The ones that make her mad are the ones that are like negative, because she knows first and foremost how long and how much effort goes into a coverage like that. And so she gets really irritated and she's like, well, don't look at this, this, and this. But then the ones where people are like, are you married? That was cracking her up. So
Do you get like the old ladies sending you the emojis of like the hearts or of the flame in the eyes?
I got, we just love Evan. We love him, or blah, blah, blah. They were all over the map, but it's been a very interesting couple of weeks from that standpoint and from weather here. It is March and April, so I guess expect any type of weather, right?
Exactly. That's what we'll be talking about. We'll be talking about severe weather. It's been a busy last few days. March 4th, or part of April 4th, and we're recording this. So we're really getting into the heart of the severe weather season, especially across the Southeast, and that's where a lot of it has been. There's also been a lot of it in the Midwest, and then here in the Midwest, we also have the chance of getting some snow, which is going to be interesting. It's always really fun.
Just continues.
Yeah,
Severe weather, snow.
Yeah, we don't really know what season that we're in until we for sure know that it is no longer going to snow. So that's cool. And so we'll talk about all of the different severe weather and more that it's probably still coming over the next 48 hours. The chance of rain, Evan and I got into a disagreement about this last episode. And usually when that happens, we decide, okay, we should probably do a deeper dive on what the chance of rain means, why we do what we do. Keep in mind, we both went to the same school, the same schooling and everything, programs, yet somehow we do things very differently.
Same classes, same time, same professors. So we'll tell you how we got to this point on the road.
And then, yes, is winter over? Yes, but no.
It's a good way to put it.
Yes, but no. Winter is not over. Okay, so it has been, not too busy of a severe weather season for me compared to last year. I know for you, Evan, it has been much busier than last year, and it's really just been busy, really across the board. When we look at the kind of the averages for severe weather that we've seen just so far this year, we're running above average in terms of tornadoes. So red line is where we're at right now. And the only years running above us are, I believe, 2017 and what's this orange one, 2023. And that's because, well, there's actually severe weather going on across both alleys, if you will, during those years. Last year, it was mostly Tornado Alley, Dixie Alley, didn't get much, but it's coming in much more even this year. And so that's why we have these big numbers for the last, what is this? We had a huge jump in March, a little bit lull at the end of March, and now that we've gotten to early April, things have really started to come up. Evan, I know you have some data that shows just how busy it's been in the last couple of days with the severe weather down there. I know Southeast Missouri has been super busy, and then just the Mid-South has been really busy in general.
Yeah, and this is kind of an awakening for us here in Alabama because, like you were just talking about, 2024, I dove back into like the late 90s, and I could not find a year that even got close to that quiet. We had 14 tornado warnings, I believe, in 2024 total. We had more than that on one single day here in March, so it's been wild. But we were quiet. So this ridge, I did an explainer on this because we've been beneath this ridge. We've had record highs. A few places touch 90, right? And meanwhile, back to the west, a little closer to you. Actually, this is really right in between us, is where this has been happening. And this is a look at the filtered preliminary storm report. So what this does is it takes out possible duplicates in the same county around the same time, because you'll get these reports in very quickly and they all kind of congeal together. And so this is what they've kind of filtered out. But 500 reports on April 2nd, 52 of those were tornado reports. That was a big day. I'm sure you've seen the pictures on social media, Wes. They were like movie type tornadoes where you could see the whole wedge. Ripping through Arkansas, a very notable one there in the northeastern corner. But even Tennessee, Illinois, Ohio. Really hard to find areas that were untouched by this. And this was a high risk day, which we've talked before about the SPC and some of the struggles, success. This was, I feel like, was a success day. Would you agree as far as a high risk outline?
Yeah, I think it went pretty well. Overall, I think maybe the like density of tornadoes wasn't maybe quite in line with the high risk in terms of the tornadic activity, but I mean overall, yes, like this was a severe weather outbreak. There was at one point, man, this may have been like 7 o'clock at night, I think, in which there were six tornadoes on the ground from Illinois through those few red dots down in southwestern Arkansas. It was just like one line with just flashing red boxes. Like, how our graphic system, if it's a confirmed tornado, it'll be flashing
Yep.
red boxes. It's just one swath of just tornadoes slowly making their way east across the entire country.
Yeah, I was staying up late and I was watching it on my radar scope. And Lauren's like, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm watching weather, honestly." And it was just one of those like setups where it was like, man, these are the supercells. You could tell that there was definitely a hook. There was a debris ball. So it was a very, imminent danger. But I'm with you. The high risk is issued a lot of times based off like the concentration or how many we're going to see over a 25-mile radius or 25 miles within any given point. So concentration may have been down, but intensity of those was certainly up. So that was April 2nd. And then we threw in yesterday. Now, yesterday's was not as active. We had an enhanced risk. And once again, just one tornado yesterday. But you got to think, for the atmosphere to rebound from one day to the next and still have that many reports, most of them being hail and wind, still pretty significant. So, all together here, just a look at the reports just kind of thrown together here this morning. But over 18 states, 580 reports. So that's wind, hail, tornado. These are still being updated, so the numbers are probably changing as we speak. But 52 tornado reports. I believe it's up to 53 now since I put this together. Obviously, wind is a big one, and hail. And once again, Wes, I think for the last time we did this, I looked at the top state for tornado reports, and I believe Missouri, 15. Now there was very close, I think 13 in Illinois or Indiana, and but you guys have been busy. From all sorts of weather. You've had winter weather. You've had fires. I think.
Hazardous air.
That's right.
Yeah.
I had several questions asking about what is it called? Dirty rain,
Oh yeah, dirt rain, mud rain is what
mud
is what
rain.
it's I've heard around here.
Beneath one of the posts where I shared the episode, people were like, "What the heck is dirt rain?" I said, "Well, watch and find out," because they apparently deal with that up in the Kansas City market. But crazy 2 days. This is not uncommon, unfortunately, for April. And later on, I'm going to have a this day in history, which is close to me being in the event that happened, and then where a plane went down close to where I grew up. So it's
Wow.
yeah, it's a couple miles away actually from my mom's house. So just a very busy couple of days. Buckle up. We've got we get to May here in the southeast and we start to trend back the frequency of those severe days, and it starts to shift more towards your direction on the
Hmm.
central plains. So we're right in the heart of it. This is definitely the time of year to be prepared. But again, a very, very busy couple of days, and it goes with the territory. Unfortunately, a lot of people asking, "Why is this happening? Why is this happening?" Well, you get a very active, jet stream in the right setup here, and unfortunately, that's what we've had the last couple afternoons.
You know, the numbers for Missouri in terms of tornadoes have been super high, but I have been lucky enough locally in that my area, my DMA, the people that can at least see me on like cable over the air, had one tornado, and then there was two or three like just outside of our market. So yeah, I mean we've definitely had severe weather, but thankfully our tornado count has been pretty low. It has been across southeast Missouri and eastern Missouri, literally actually anywhere but my market is where it's been, because eastern, southwestern, southeastern Missouri stuff has been everywhere. I used to work in Southwest Missouri, and I will not go work back there again because there are so many nights in which you're just like up forever because
Yeah.
tornadoes are just constantly coming through.
Hopefully they keep missing you.
Yes, yes, seriously. But oh, that can change. We were just discussing about the setup for why we're getting all these storms, and it is because of this front that has just been slowly making its way, called stationary front. And so moisture has just been constantly coming up from the south here. So it's moist and it's a windy environment. And so not only is there severe weather, there's a ton of rain. I remember looking like a week ago at the rain that could come this week, and I was like, my God, like a foot to 16 inches of rain could just fall in one stripe.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening right here from Kentucky all the way through. I didn't realize that it would also come with like the daily chances of severe weather as well, because you would think, no, the atmosphere can't just keep on churning out severe weather if it's raining so much every day, but it's going hand in hand right now.
Yeah, it's one of those other parameters we look at when forecasting severe weather. I know down here, if we've had a batch of morning rain and we're supposed to have storms in the afternoon, that's a huge influencing factor. If we have the rain in the morning, it takes a lot out of the atmosphere. You'd think, April 2nd, that Wednesday, there would have been a lot of energy taken away. But as you mentioned, you get just this tropical air slinging around the western side of this high, and it's just constant energy. You've got a front there too. There's your lift. And while we've been untouched, I mean, this has been tantalizingly close. I mean, we had a tornado at right around midnight just passed that moved from northern Mississippi into southern Tennessee. And I mean, you could see it from on radar. It didn't get close to us, but it hooked up near Nashville. And when you think about our distance, it's not far away, but we've had nothing because of this big expansive ridge that's set up here.
Thankfully, they stay away from you again. Unfortunately, man, like Little Rock and Central Arkansas, another pretty elevated risk. I've had to choose my words carefully because it's not like a high risk, and it's also not like an elevated. It's a level 4, so it's a moderate risk. But either way, it's like the exact same setup. Stuff happening over and
Same
over again
spots.
in the same areas. We'll try not to focus too much on like the current situation, but do want to go through the forecast real quick. And Evan, you can see all the reds, yellows. That's where the severe weather essentially. That's like a signal for us. Like, hey, this is where the strongest thunderstorms and severe weather will be. Just like broadly looking at it as it goes across the southeast into Mississippi, and then eventually into Birmingham. What's Saturday night for you all?
Yeah, we've got I think our window, and the timing's kind of changed because some of the models are slowing it down, but we've got like a window from 1 a.m. to about 1 p.m. crossing the state.
Any concern about severe weather as this comes through?
This one looks like there's going to be a lot of this is going to sound weird, but lightning and small hail. So the last event we had this past Monday didn't really yield much as far as severe weather, but we had enough instability that we had just a tremendous amount of lightning strikes. I mean, at one point there was like 700 lightning strikes over a 10-minute frame in the radar. So that was impactful in the sense that, that's loud. It scared people. But I think this will be a big, hail, maybe wind. The wind profiles don't really look there for tornadoes, but with a QLCS like this, a linear feature, you can't ever rule out smaller embedded tornadoes. So we'll watch for that. But this will be impacting church folks pre-dawn, and then it'll usher in a little tease of April cold air that can sneak in here from time to time.
You mentioned the hail and the lightning. I think there's kind of an interesting contrast here where if you get big hail, it's allowed to obviously grow. And so maybe there's less contact with ice crystals in general that are bouncing off of each other because they're not allowed to accrete together. And so if you get more small, widespread hail, there's more of a bouncing effect. And so you'll get more of a static buildup, and then you'll get more lightning in general. It's
That was
kind of,
exactly what we
yeah,
had. It was pea size to marble size, and it was reported with a ton of storms, which, as you know, for severe weather criteria, it's got to be 1 inch in diameter. Well, they weren't quite that big, but they did contribute to all of that lightning because, you've got them brushing together, and then you create all these charges. And there's a charge difference in the cloud, and lightning is the cloud's way of getting back to equilibrium or balance. And there was just a constant presence of at least smaller hail cores in there, and it was loud. People were, I did coverage that morning because schools were canceled, so they elected to do coverage, and people were freaked out about the thunder lightning. We hadn't had an event with that much lightning and thunder in a while, and I think we may have another noisy passage here with this system.
that must be saying something because you guys get plenty of thunderstorms across the southeast. So
Yeah,
to
so
freak
this is
y'all
the
out,
first one in a while with that much.
I have been to Florida, and just dealing with thunderstorms there, the amount of lightning there like is scary. I'll never forget that. Just being there over a weekend, I was like, "There's cloud of ground lightning everywhere you go. Like this is insane."
Yeah, not for me. I was scared of lightning as a kid, and I still am as an adult to some extent. So Florida, no thanks.
Speaking of frozen precipitation, for my folk here in Missouri, we this is just such a classic March and April thing, is to go from severe weather to snow. As it starts to come in, I think the snow will probably miss my area, but the Ozarks, the places that had more tornadoes and then across eastern Missouri, they may get some light snow on late Saturday into Sunday, and then a pretty brief push of cool air comes in, and I think that may be it for snow for the year for the Midwest. I mean, you go look up into Chicago and the Great Lakes. I mean, they still have snow, and then across the Mountain West, they still have some snow to deal with as well. But just considering how active the winter was, I can't completely rule out another little system trying to sniff in here, but it
Sniff
doesn't
in.
look very promising. Yeah, just
Yeah,
trying to
this
come in.
wow, winter weather alerts, New Mexico. How about that?
In the mountains, there is a chance for some accumulation across southern Missouri. What is that? 30%, 35%, and it's technically for 1 inch of snow, but it's gonna be less than an inch of snow
Yeah,
with how we're in the season right now. But yeah, New Mexico snow, of course, North Dakota snow, Michigan snow. So snow in the places that are used to it, and no snow down in Birmingham. Looks like you guys are safe. I think
yeah.
you're done for the winter.
I think we can close the book on snow for us.
That's good. That's good. That's good. Now it's just frozen precipitation to have to deal with. We talked about the warmer air coming in. We have cool air. I mean, for the next few days, and then once we get that kicked off, it is warm, and we are pushing 80 degrees here. I think next week in Kansas City. That should feel really nice.
Yeah, we'll have relatively below average, and this time of year, our climo is about like 73 for a high and 50 for a low. So anything below that's going to be blue on this map, but it looks like several days next week we're actually going to be below average, and we have a chance for a frost one of the days. Either Tuesday or Wednesday morning, models kind of hinting at a dip into the upper 30s, which, as you know, you get the right surface and your air temperature might be, mid to upper 30s, but at the surface, material will cool quicker. So, like your car, right? Like the metal surface of your car might be closer to freezing, so you'll get that frost on the vehicles and perhaps on some bushes as well. So, people don't want to hear that down here. A lot of farming, they don't want a frost at this point in the season.
So we may get a frost, and frost is. It sounds like super easy. It'd be like, oh, it's like 34 degrees, frost will form. No, your relative humidity has to hit 100%, and
Yep.
then temperatures have to get 34, 35 degrees. But at the same time, it, if it's 34 degrees, your plants can still get injured, frost or no frost. So where are we at here? 50s, warm blob. You say Wednesday morning? Is
Tuesday and Wednesday. I was looking at the NBM, which is the National
There you
Blend of
go.
Models, and it's kind of got both mornings right at about 39 to 42
Yeah.
here. So we've got potential frost either of those days. Gone back and forth which one's going to be the cooler day, but the heart of the cold air will be over here at that point. And again, it's the frost forming wouldn't be an issue from a moisture standpoint because our dew points are probably going to be in the mid to upper 30s. So there's not a whole lot of room there for moisture to be added. But again, a lot of folks paying attention to that. We've already had our average last freeze, which is typically around March 24th. So anything freeze wise, which I'm not expecting, would be past date. But we've had frosts that go, into mid-April before, so we'll keep an eye on it.
Nice. And then we're all getting warm next week. Yeah, 70s.
This is the season.
I'm maybe warmer than you, actually.
Yeah, the cool
I
air
may be
doesn't last
warmer.
long this time of year.
All right. So the one of the big parts of this episode is what does the chance of rain mean? Okay. And it's like the most used probably thing in weather forecast, right? Chance of rain. We all say it. But it's crazy how I don't know if misunderstood is the correct way to say this or misinterpreted or the different ways you can interpret the chance of rain. So, Evan, I want to hear what your definition of a chance of rain is.
So to give this a little bit of a background, I stopped putting probability, the percentages on my 7 day. And I'm not completely against people who, like, if you want to put it on there, great. What I found when people asked me, and this came coming from a lot of family, is they didn't understand the percentages. Even when I explained it, to other people, they would hear different results or different meteorologists one way or the other. There is criteria specific for the probabilities, and I think you have a graphic on that. But I forecast, and I more or less just say, hey, we're going to have the chance of scattered, isolated, numerous, or stray. I'll use those sort of words. When I think of stray, I think, hey, most of us are probably dry, but hey, a couple of you may have a brief shower, maybe a passing thunderstorm. Isolated, we're going to see pockets of hit and miss rain throughout the DMA. Scattered, a lot of us, probably more than half, going to get the rain, the thunderstorms, whatever it might be. And the numerous is just about everywhere, possibly multiple ways. But what I'll do is I'll put the wording in my 7 day. So the last couple days we had a very minor. So I put stray T-storm underneath the icon. No percentage, just straight thunderstorm. But I spend the 2.5 minutes of weather explaining, okay, if you have, here's the best potential for it. Because what I found is if I put 40% there and people are watching, they assume, okay, well, I'm probably good to go because that's less than a 50% chance. And that might be true, but there's going to be a section in the DMA that probably has a heavy downpour or, a washout at some point. To them, it's misleading. I've had people think that you take a section of the map, and if I say 60%, then 60% of there is going to be shrouded in rain, 40% is going to be completely dry. So here's the actual sort of criteria verbiage to this, Wes, if you want to explain.
Well, this is you were just kind of explaining like, hey, I
Oh,
say
yeah,
isolated, scattered. I'm like, all right, perfect. Like this, but for instance, when you say chance of rain, does that mean you think there is like 40% or greater, like 30% or greater? Or does this table pretty much match up with
No,
what you
that
say?
that matches up. So when I say scattered, I think probably higher than 40. Um, and honestly, the even like the widely scattered, I'd put a little bit higher. I use isolated and stray as kind of the baseline, very low. So that's your like 10 to 30%. I think I'd say scattered for maybe 40, 50, 60% would be the conversion. Numerous, probably 70 and up. And again, I think there's probably people who prefer percentage, but I've found a lot of the feedback I get, sometimes people will be mad, be like, hey, you had a 70% chance of rain, I didn't get a drop. So something else I have to take into consideration too is you have people's livelihood who depends on this. And
Mm-hmm.
they don't depend on the percentage in the 7 days, not what I'm saying, but if I put a 70% chance of rain, they're like, I'm not going to water my plants because we're going to have rain, then perhaps that's mistaken, or that looks at, okay, well, a 70%, that's the majority, and we didn't get rain. So another thing too, on the daily planners, I don't know if you use these, but if you pull up an app it'll show a percentage hour by hour, and the app will be targeted to your location. So then people are like, hey, I'm here at my house, here's my address, and there's a 60% chance of rain at 4 o'clock. Walk outside, it's partly cloudy. So does that mean that the 40% won? Does that mean that somewhere up the street had rain? It just has become a confusing way to communicate. And since we're in the communication business, I thought I would try something, which is taking them out and seeing what people say. And so far, the response has been okay. If I put underneath there rain and thunderstorms widespread, or everybody gets rain, I can use words, because that's the other thing too, is it's not just a graphic for people to stare at. You can explain things on the air, versus them just interpreting a percentage. So again, not completely against it. I think you can make it a more ingestible information by giving it more verbiage and maybe showing a map of where the rain chances are greatest. And especially if I feel very confident about it, I'll even draw, a region on the map, and I'll just put, green. This is where we're going to have the rain today. This is where we won't. And sometimes that's easy to do. Other times, it's a little bit harder.
I think what makes maybe your position across the southeast a little different is because you will be more likely to get diurnal thunderstorms, and so yeah, like sometimes the whole area has an equal chance of rain. Like sometimes the whole area has a 30% chance of rain because they're just going to pop up,
Yeah, and
and
that's
like
where a
you know
lot of
who's
this
going to get
came
it.
from, is those pop-up thunderstorms. I mean, you can almost never figure out. It's like you put a pot of water on the stove, right? You crank it up, and you're waiting for that first bubble when it starts boiling. I couldn't tell you where in that pot that first bubble is going to happen. The atmosphere can be the same way as the first rising air parcel that creates a shower, a thunderstorm. Sometimes you can look at weird identifiers, maybe a boundary left over from the day before, but most of the time it's very hard to determine. So a lot of this came from the summertime. People, I mean, we have partly cloudy, 92 chance of rain. June, July, August.
Every day.
It's a wonderful.
Every day. As I was just looking at the scale, something ironically hit me, and that is the 80, 90, 100% chance. See what it says, occasional or periods of. Um, that has nothing to do with an area. Those are all time. That's all time. And it's ironic because you do not supposed to, like, if there's a 90% chance of rain, you're not saying it's going to rain 90% of the day, even though the same table is coming from the National Weather Service saying use time as a qualifier. I don't use time as a qualifier either. If it's going to rain for 3 hours on one day, it's a 100% chance of rain. So here's what the chance of rain does not mean. I think sometimes maybe it's good to like start there first. It does not mean the first one we've already disagreed here. This is hilarious. Does not mean that 40% of the area will be covered by precipitation, or it does not mean that from 7 to 7, 40% of that time it will be raining, and doesn't mean that 40% of the time it'll be raining moderately and the other 60% of the time it'll be raining lightly. Now, the whole given area also comes down to like where you're forecasting for. For instance, I'm forecasting for the Kansas City metropolitan area. I have responsibility over a good chunk of Missouri and a little bit of Kansas, but the vast majority of people that are watching me are from the Kansas City area. And so when we do a 10-day forecast, when we do like the day planner, that percentage is for Kansas City, just like the temperature is for Kansas City as well. The sky condition is for Kansas City, everything. But, I don't want to leave the people in Chillicothe out or the people in Ottawa, Kansas out. And so, like Evan was alluding to, show these graphics. On a day like today, when there's widespread rainfall coming through, there's really not going to be a huge change in, who has what chance of rain. But for instance, let me see if I can just use a general map here. So for instance, let's say I know that there will be rain, and this happens a lot. It's just going to go all the way around here and just miss Kansas City, okay? Because there'll be northwest flow and just going looping around, okay? But that would essentially be a 40% chance of rain, 30% chance of rain. But if I have high confidence that it's not going to rain in Kansas City, I don't want to tell this area that there is a 40 or 50% chance of rain when, in all likelihood, it's probably not going to rain. Maybe it'll give us a 20% chance of rain, but I feel like giving an area a 50% chance of rain, people are essentially counting on it raining when, in all likelihood, that's probably not going to happen at all.
I think it's interesting you bring up that you're forecasting for Kansas City because, similar to you, I put the numbers in for Birmingham. Do we have temperatures north of here that'll end up being cooler on the morning and afternoon? Yes. Some areas to the south tend to be 2 to 3 degrees warmer in the afternoon as well. So I use Birmingham too. However, some people, I don't know if we surveyed, and I'll put this up this week, is how do you interpret the percentage? If somebody's watching in Haleyville, which is a small rural community in our northwestern corner of the DMA, if you see 60%, how do you take that? Because some
Yeah.
people might think like that's the 7 day for my location. So see where Hamilton just showed up? That's right over there. Hamilton, Haleyville, Northwest. So that's,
Oh, yeah.
Hamilton, Ewan, that whole Northwest area is very sparsely populated. And again, that's a spot that sometimes if we have a front approaching, they will get the rain first and much more widespread than the eastern side of the state. And so that's why it can sometimes be hard for me to say, okay, there's this percentage of chance of rain, and for people to understand that. And I love that graphic you just used, though. I've never used something like that where you put all the towns in the DMA and then a percentage underneath. That's an interesting approach I had not thought of. So maybe there's something to that to work with. But it's also great, I think, that you point out the time aspect, because that's another thing that it's like, okay, does that mean 60% of my day is rain? No. But how many people think that? I think that's what it comes down to
A
is what the
lot.
viewer.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people do interpret it that way. And I have had a colleague that will adjust their pop based on the perception of the public. And I disagree with doing it that way, because then it's just becoming more confusing for other forecasts within our department and other departments. Like if it's really tough to standardize things in weather in general, and
Yep.
so I don't like that. If it's going to rain, it should be a 90 to 100% chance of rain, and then it's your job to then go through of when it will rain.
Okay, I got a question for you. What is your standpoint on putting 50% for a day? Because to me, that is the ultimate cop out from a forecaster. And if it was either 40 or 60 for me, I always had to put one or the other.
Oh, okay.
50% to me said, I'm telling the viewer, I don't really know, flip a coin. Okay. Because a lot of people were like, oh, it's a 50-50 chance. That's great. It either could or couldn't rain. Those are your two options, right? And I remember people
Yeah.
in Dothan telling me that and thinking, well, you know what? You're not wrong in that thinking, that mindset. So that's always stuck with me. So I could never put a 50%. I'd go up 10 or down 10.
I've actually never had that thought process before. I've never thought about that. Um, if I really don't know, I'll be like 50.
There you
Like,
go.
yes, that is like, if someone
CYA.
says, yeah, if someone does call me out for that, I'll be like, I'm gonna be real with you. Sometimes I just really don't know either way. And so like, that's how it is. Like,
Yeah.
I just don't know.
And to be clear, like, for people who say, oh, shouldn't you know everything? We've come a long way. We touched on this, in a previous episode of how much better we've become in forecasting. But there's setups sometimes that have me scratching my head, sitting in here like, what's going to happen? And you have to take a more conservative approach. And maybe that's one of those days. But yeah, there's days we don't know, and maybe that is a 50%.
Earlier this week, I was getting so frustrated. I was just like, I just want to come into work, and the thing that I said yesterday was still going to happen. Like if I'm like forecasting for one day, 2 days in advance, like I just want to come into work the next day, and that still be the case of what's going to happen. And it was just like it's so freaking frustrating. 'Cause,
Yeah,
like,
I work Monday to Friday, so Monday's always the most challenging day for me to get a hold of the pattern if I haven't looked at it over the weekend. I don't know if you do. I keep a running total here
Okay.
of my numbers and how close they were, high and low. Was I within the 3 degree range? Was I not? And that's just for me personally. And I put either a check or an X if I don't get it. And there's some days where it just changes, or we're right. Like for you, you are right on a boundary. I mean, if that front shifts significantly over the span of a couple of days, it could totally upend your forecast, which can be so frustrating. And everything you looked at Monday has completely changed Tuesday for the foreseeable future, and it's tough to get a grasp of it. But those numbers at least let me figure out, okay, was I in the ballpark with this? I can look back, last Thursday. What did I put for this upcoming Monday? That's several days out, but how did I do? Did I have a good idea of it? Did the pattern change? And again, that's not going with the probabilities here, but it's just another way where we can kind of keep an eye on things and maybe see if we verified or not. But I'm with you. That is so frustrating. I come in here at 3:15 and I'm like, son of a serious? Come on,
Yeah.
weather.
Yeah. And so, like, if we're frustrated, you can only imagine that the viewer is just as frustrated, or maybe there's some understanding where it's like, that's weather, it changes.
Another thing too, I've come to steer into the skid. If I'm wrong, I'll get up there and be like, "Look, y'all, I thought this was going to happen. It did not. Let's try this again. Here's your forecast for today." Just come clear.
Yeah.
We are not the smartest dudes in the room. I know we're the weather wise guys, but we get it wrong, and that's one of the things in this business. You're always learning. There's events I'll look back. A lot of them have been winter events for us that I just don't have a good grasp of it. So I'll look back at what I thought, at what happened, and what went wrong, and try to learn from it for next time. And that's a lot of our job, is to look back and see what verified. There's days where I'm sure, Wes, if you had a football, you'd spike it and be like, yeah, that's right, nailed it. There's other days where you're like, I'm
Well,
not.
as soon as I spike the football, Mother Nature's going to be like, "Jokes
Smack
on
you
you,
back.
buddy. You're about to miss it in 2 days." And then another interesting thing about the chance of rain is that it doesn't even have to be that much. Like a hundredth is like nothing. I won't. If it's 100th, I'm probably not going to give it a very high chance of rain, but that's technically the definition. A measurable amount of 100th of an inch, enough for puddles to form on the sidewalk. That's
I
what
don't
that
even know
would
if a
be.
hundredth of an inch is going to make a puddle. That's
Yeah,
like the sun barely went behind the clouds.
yeah, exactly. So technically, 100th of an inch or more liquid in this situation. Specified time period for us, it is generally when the sun is up and down. However, if there is strong to severe thunderstorms, we will put the pop on there. If it's going to be a thunderstorm at 1 a.m., we'll put the pop on there maybe the day before or the day after, just to specify the situation. And the point is, the forecast area is for us, Kansas City, but for Evan, he cares about everybody in his DMA, unlike me.
Yeah, they when we talk to like our parent company and whatnot, they want your number to be for Birmingham, and that's what when I look back at what verified, I'm pulling up the Birmingham numbers, but when I'm forecasting, I try not to forget about. We have a lot of people in our rural counties. We got 4 stations here in Birmingham, and a lot of people in our rural counties watch us exclusively. There's a lot of folks in downtown or the metro that are tied to a different station watch it more. So I'm not trying to just like pick certain people to forecast to, but I do think some people will take it a different way than others. And this is just one way to try to do it a different way. If I find out from viewers after we do this that they want that back, sure, I'll absolutely do it. It's about the viewer. We're trying to communicate to people. So I will absolutely, look back at that, see feedback, and if we need to put percentages back in, by all means, we'll throw it back in the forecast, make everybody happy.
I would, for the record, love to do the way that you're doing it, but that is not going to be happening anytime soon. I'm over here with my calculator out doing forecast certainty times aerial coverage and then moving the decimal places to the. I've
Didn't we
never
get
actually
enough
done this
math when we were
before.
in school?
Love math.
Hmm.
Love math so much. No, I never do this for my chance of rain. I'm just like doing it in my head the whole time.
Same. I've never
I've
thought
never
of
done this.
a equation for it, which was an equation for everything in our business, but very interesting. The other Mets here, James and Riley, who just walked in, they use percentages. There's nothing wrong with it. Again, if I saw something else, That said otherwise, sure, we'll throw them back in. It's just an ambiguous value. It's hard to say everybody's going to have the same response. So I've just gone with words and icons.
So you're the only one that does words, but when James comes in, he puts percentages on it.
Yep. So my 7-day numbers, I finish at noon, and then he comes and puts them in. He puts pops in, and then I take them out in the morning.
You have nice bosses. I have nice bosses too, but that would not. That
Hey,
would not
James,
fly.
the one thing James told me when we got here, because I asked him, my last station we had to be tied to the chief. He didn't want us to deviate numbers too much. I said, what are your thoughts on this? He goes, you put whatever you want, but you stick to it. And it was a good
Oh,
rule of thumb. If you screw up, that's your numbers. But how are you supposed to learn? And this is outside just the pops, but how are you supposed to learn if you take somebody else's numbers? I mean, I've learned the most when I put mine in and I think I've got it right and other people don't. And I've been wrong. And I'm like, oh, shoot, I should have thought twice about that. But yeah, we kind of each independently. Now, I don't change it drastically. If I see some numbers that have been inputted by Riley or James the night before, and I have a way different number, maybe I'll defer and be like, all right, let's see if I'm just way off on this. Because you also don't want to give the viewer whiplash who watched the 10 o'clock the night before and saw this number, and then at 4 o'clock in the morning, it's shifted, extreme. So anyway,
sometimes though it does. Sometimes you just gotta give them the whiplash and be like,
it does.
this is what it is. This is some whiplash. If you're going from Buttercup, California to
I don't know how to say it.
Spinkage, Michigan.
It kept looking like spinach to me every time I wrote it out. But this was the first time California's been on it. And beating out Texas. So 102 versus -4. Both of these are below 1,000 feet of elevation. I think they're both right around 400 feet, actually. They're pretty similar, but this goes to the time of year. And I just think this segment's interesting. We may do away with it when we get in the summer, but 106-degree temperature difference.
That is pretty good. That is pretty good. I would be curious to see what like the largest temperature difference we've had from all of these different hot or not segments. Like I would wonder. I would be curious like what season, if like early spring is the one that has the biggest temperature difference. But
That might be that could be a good thing to bring up because I think I still might have some of the numbers I did, but in the winter everyone's cold, so you might have a big difference. But
except for
70.
freaking South Texas, there was like a 90-degree day there in South Texas.
Did you know in that South Texas market that we've pulled from that had McAllen and Rio Grande, there's 20 stations there, and 16 of them have verified in the triple digits so far this year. Only 4, as of earlier this week, had not yet verified at 100 or greater. So that's the Brownsville National Weather Service.
Desert, straight up
Fun fact.
desert. And they're like actually not that far away from water, which
No,
is
they're not.
even more
They're
interesting.
on the western side, like bordering up to Mexico, but they're still, a stone's throw. And I guess their southwest winds off the Mexican plateau that are dry is what makes it so extreme. But
Mm.
yeah, nevertheless, who's hot, who's not? There you go. And if you're a fan of astronomy, kind of a quiet week here.
Hmm.
We've got a crescent moon, which is always pretty, always takes good photos. But the thing of note, and we have a lot of astrophotographers around here, is one thing I've learned. The Gemini constellation, the two brightest features are Pollux and Castor.
Hmm.
Pollux is a star. Castor is actually a cluster of stars. They both appear as individual, but you'll be able to see those if you look up about an hour, maybe a little hour plus after sunset. And then, of course, Mars is wedged in there. And then next week, we'll probably talk about the full pink moon, how it gets its name, and how to see it.
The pink moon.
Pink moon.
One of my top 3 least favorite moons, the pink moon, the beaver moon, the worm moon, and the cold moon are my top 3 favorites. Full moon names.
Your favorites? Okay. I thought you were about to say least favorite. So what do you got against the beaver moon? Come on now.
The beaver moon is the most ridiculous one. I think cold moon is just like it's just dumb. I think it's just a simple dumb name, the cold moon. So there's no animal doing anything around this time of year. We could name it after like
Should we call it the hibernating moon?
yeah the bear moon, the quiet bear moon.
The quiet bear moon. Yeah, the moon names, it's an interesting, I don't know if we've touched on that. We can maybe touch on that. It's pretty cool how people hundreds of years ago were able to document weather without anything like this. They correlated times a year, moon phases into what to expect. So pretty neat
Speaking of
stuff.
bears, maybe polar bears,
Uh
this is
oh.
actually the most like difficult. Just to like find the data for Nome, Alaska was a little tricky in itself. I
Did you
will
do it right?
say
Do I need to go back and check because you've had a couple errors with
you may
respect?
need to, bro, because I don't know how the low was. How we both got the low so far wrong.
Hmm.
That's what I was. That's what.
Sometimes when we've missed it before, we've calculated the low to be that morning, and a front comes through, and it means
Mhm.
like by that night, like at 11:58, it's dropped significantly. So it might have been one of those events, but yeah, I think some of the data showed that the low was going to be 29, a high of 32, like almost no swing. And I was like, that's probably not right. But does that mean you got this one right?
Yeah, I did. I got this
Okay,
one
well, I'm
right.
gonna have to do some digging then.
Just to make sure I'm not shite. I'm not cheating here. But yeah, and also you sent me the forecast like 3:45 in the morning, and I was like, oh, Evan has got this slam dunk because the low is going to occur two hours from now.
So to be fair, I had not looked at it. This was previous day stuff, and I didn't want it to look like I was being, shoddy or suspicious. So I actually used,
Uh,
numbers that I had had from. I had looked at it. I forgot to send it to you, but there you
no, you
go.
should have
You're on it.
just you just should have not been honest and just been like, I got to it when I could.
Should have, but I've got integrity
Next
over
time,
here.
next time, just do that.
Hmm, maybe I
I
should.
will
So
not.
West takes a 7-4 commanding lead. How about that?
Feel free to double check this. I will
Oh, I
not.
will. Don't worry. When we get off here, I'm going to make sure. What was the date again? Because we got pushed back this week,
It
so it
was
was
Tuesday.
the first.
Yes, the first.
All
The
right.
first.
So where are we going
Um,
next?
but I had to go to. By the way, I was looking at POAM. That was like that was the call sign for the airport.
POAM. Okay.
No
Yeah.
K. POAM.
So of the two of us, I do more of the number looking ups. I love numbers. I do that in a lot of my explainers. So I'd have to go back and check
Please,
West. So we'll
please.
do that. But I'll give you the W for now.
Thank you. Indianapolis,
Okay.
which is located in Indiana,
Are you
the
sure?
lower, the lower. I think so. Lower 48. The reason why I chose Indianapolis, Indiana, is because I am doing a story on storm splitting around cities. And is there some folklore in Birmingham about storms splitting?
Yeah, I mean, depending on where you live, I don't know specifically here, but there's people who call it the little dome, where storms will be coming and then they'll
Dome.
split almost like there's a dome blocking it. There's also alleys that people will say here that always seem to get hit and ask me, is there a climatological reason? Is there a feature like a mountain or a lake or a river? So
Yeah.
that stuff's very fascinating.
All right. So we are doing a spring weather special. Do you guys do this? Winter weather
We've
specials, spring weather specials?
we've not, no,
Don't don't suggest it. Don't bring it up.
I won't.
Just keep it that way. We got enough going on around here. Okay, so
Good.
there's this thing called the Tonganoxie split. Let me share my screen again. And it is the apparent
Fancy
propensity.
word, propensity, I
Yeah,
think, right?
thank you. For storms to split whenever they get through Tonganoxie, Kansas. And Tonganoxie, Kansas, how you can probably see on your map,
Yep.
is right there. So it's like you get a squall line going through Kansas City, and all of a sudden it starts to just break up, like right over here. Well, um, most local weather experts, like the National Weather Service, KU professors, like everybody involved, is like, doesn't happen. It's magic. You're making it up. Like you're just seeing something that's not there. This is like the Loch Ness monster Bigfoot of Kansas City weather,
Which are obviously
essentially.
real.
Exactly. So I did an investigation on it, and I found two papers, one out of Indianapolis, one out of St. Louis, which are similar sized urban metro cores, as storms split under the right conditions when they approach the cities. And so I found like the godfather of storm splitting studies to do an interview with me and go through some radar images and like pretty much confirm that this storm splitting thing does happen under the right conditions. And I actually came across this when I was talking to a different researcher last year who talked about how storms, and this was like equally as fascinating to me, is that if a storm comes through in the right conditions, let's say it'll be like right here, and the overall flow is out of the northwest, the storm will come through, hit the urban rural boundary, ride it along until it runs out of urban rural, and then remain on its flow. And as it's going through that boundary, it grows in size, picks up aerosols, it increases the rain intensity, and increases the likelihood of hail.
Wow.
And I've seen that happen too. Um, and so as I was like asking her questions, she also was like, "Oh yeah, and you can also have storms like split when they come through." And I was like, "What?" So
That is fascinating. Well, we'll have to touch on that in another one, what you find,
yeah,
and I'll actually do some digging here and see. I know in Atlanta there was that thought that storms would intensify over the metro because it was hotter, and that urban heat
yeah,
island would kind of add to the intensity of storms in the summertime. But I think that's worth revisiting for sure.
it does. It does. I talked with Marshall Shepard about this, and it does both. It intensifies and it splits. It's super interesting. Yeah, we'll add that to the next week's topic unless you have something better to talk about.
Yeah, we'll
Or
do
is
that, and then
Greg
other.
coming next week?
I haven't heard from him. We'll talk. He had to go
Okay.
home to Florida, I believe, for something, but he's been following this, and he intends to be on with us at some point. I'll reach back out to him. But if not, let's do something like this. You talk about what you learned there, and I'll look at some other. I know there's things here in Alabama that people swear have a role in it. We'll just bring some of those up and what could or could not be true versus myth. I think that'd be awesome. Real quick before we go here,
Oh
uh,
yeah, sorry. Yes, the
that's
weather
all right.
history.
It's a good thing to end on. So there's a lot of things that happened, this week in history, but this one hitting close to us, I thought we'd share. So this was in 1977. An F5 moved through just north of Birmingham. So Smithfield is, a stone's throw north of Birmingham, less populated, but still, I mean, just tremendous amount of damage as this moved through. 22 fatalities, 130 injured. And you got to think in 77, the warnings back then, they're, again, doing the best they could, but that's a massive tornado to come through here. And I believe Dr. Fujita was on the heels of this and came in right after
Oh,
surveying it as well. So that has a cool historical tie. And with this same system, believe it or not, it brought down Southern Airways Flight 242. So why do I bring this up? First off, I'm fascinated by aviation. I love airplanes, anything to do with airplanes. I find them fascinating, and also case studies that involve weather, because planes, whether people know it or not, are built to withstand extreme weather. There's been instances, of course, in the past. You had the Lockheed Delta flight in Dallas go down in a microburst, I think in '95 or thereabouts, and then
mm,
this one in 1977. And this one was from ingesting hail within the engine turbines, which again, planes are
oh,
supposed to be able to withstand more hail within the engines than could ever bring it down. And this was not the case. This was a flight that was supposed to be, I think, up to Huntsville, very short commuter flight, really, from Atlanta to Huntsville. And they turned around. Pilots lost power to the engines, and they were trying to get to an Air Force base that's 10 minutes from my house. You probably heard of Dobbins, or maybe you have not heard of Dobbins, but it's a big Air Force base just outside of Atlanta. And they couldn't make it, so they went to this thoroughfare, this Highway 92, which I grew up off of, and they landed this plane on this highway that you're seeing there, and it obviously broke apart on impact, but there was houses nearby, and these people came out and they helped people out, and there ended up being 22 survivors of the 85 on board, in an event where they may not have survived. So bizarre thing. There's still a memorial there. I can drive to it. It's not far from my house, and our neighbor actually remembers it. He's been living here since, I don't know, maybe the 60s, but crazy day. This was the same storm system that produced that F5 in Jefferson County, which is where Birmingham is. And this was a hailstorm that this flew through. So, again, some busy weather this time of year.
I didn't know that storms, or rather that planes could ingest hail. Like
Yeah.
you
So
could hit a bird and they're toast, but they can handle hail.
yeah, the way that these turbine engines are built, the way I understand it, I'm not an engineer, but they're supposed to be able to ingest a certain amount of water per cubic foot, and they calculate that into the hail that goes in, and they're supposed to be able to handle that without it flaming out. Well, both engines flamed out, and they did research, and I'm not exactly sure what the final findings were, but there was some air with the pilots where they shouldn't have flown through something, and they did. Visibility was next to nothing. I think on the radar, it looked like there was a window there, and then there wasn't. So there's a lot that went into it. But planes these days can handle lightning, although they try to avoid it, and they can handle hail to probably a greater degree than most people would think. So planes, in truth, very safe. On this day, though, proved to be deadly for a lot. And, a lot was learned from this, though. So moving forward.
Yeah, I learned a lot from that. That's crazy. I didn't know
That's why we have this day in history, and Astronomy Minute. There's sometimes some cool things to learn.
Lovely. We'll keep the cool things coming for the next episode. More astronomy, more weather history, and Evan, you see if you can find the Loch Ness monster of Birmingham weather by the time we talk next week.
Will do. That and Bigfoot coming your way.
I guess Bigfoot more likely in all the trees around Alabama.
Perhaps roaming around one of the pine tree forests just north of here.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us for this episode. We'll see you next week.
See ya.